Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
You are listening to the Seattle Shrimp Tank, streaming to you live on Facebook, and you can catch us every other week on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio here on Facebook until we resume broadcasting in our physical studio. I'm Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host Dan Whedon. You can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle and through iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes so you never miss an episode. If you are subscribed, please rate our podcast on iTunes. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. Our guest for today's podcast is Don Morrison with TractionSpace. Welcome, Don.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you so much. And hey, you know what, Dan, since you're kind of in charge of the show, what's on your mind?
Well, since I'm kind of in charge, this is the first time ever. I'm so excited. You know what's on and look, I have to ask Brad, if it's okay, I'd like to do a little shameless promotion. Is that okay?
Oh, well, I'm all about shameless promotions.
And it includes you. It includes you in Ideal Life 360. So
fair enough.
A week from today, at this very time, as a matter of fact, 3 o'clock Pacific time, a week from today, the Unleashed Summit, which in years 2018 and 2019, we did as a live event. In fact, Brad spoke in 2018. This year, obviously, we didn't know what was going on, and so we're doing it virtually. It's free. I'm going to start off with that. The Unleashed Virtual Summit is free. You have to register. We've already got over 30 people ready to go, and we'll run out of capacity. But Ideal Life 360 is one of the sponsors. Brad, I want to thank you very much for that.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, I'm very thankful. We have a great group of panelists. I'm going to have 3 panelists, and Brad and Don, here's what they're going to be talking about. They're going to be talking about running a family business. We've got 4 family business CEOs on a panel. We've got 3 growth experts and 3 protection experts, people who can help you grow your business and people who will help you protect it. Guess what? A lot of them either have been or are about to be Shrimp Tank guests. Monica Blackwood from West Sound Workforce is going to be one of the panelists. Madeline Pratt and Sue Sanford are future. They're already lined up. They're going to be guests. Kip Boyle, cybersecurity expert, and Michael Oscuyon on insurance. They have been guests. And Gary Furr from Portland was a guest during our special COVID-19. We are jam-packed full with guests from the Shrimp Tank. In fact, one of our guests who's the CEO, you remember Ken, I just lost his last name, Ken Price. Sorry, Kenny. Ken Price from West Bay Auto Parts is also going to be a sponsor as well as a speaker. So really excited. We have 11 Winery is going to be doing a wine tasting after. And Kim Carrick from Scratch is going to be doing a tasting spirits and during the days of wine, Whedon, and whiskey. So they were also guests. This is a Shrimp Tank convention, I think, Brad. So anyway, it's free, people. If you go to danwhedon.com, go to upcoming events, actually you'll see it in the banner, and register. It's free. Reserve your spot. I hope you can make it because I think we have a lot of great people who are helping out small businesses to go post COVID-19.
Speaking of Scratch, and another one of our shrimp peeler sponsors, Port Ludlow. I drove by Scratch on Saturday.
Yeah.
On my way to Port Ludlow because we were recording all of the videos for the Transformation on the Water retreat in the fall,
right,
which we'll talk about later.
Yeah. So listen, I've said enough. I want to bring on Don Morrison. Can you tell everybody how we found Don?
Well, you know, one of the things that we love about the Shrimp Tank community is when they refer other individuals. As we always say, we interview the best and brightest, CEOs and business thought leaders in the Puget Sound area. Greg Biersack of Reach Dental Equipment Service was kind enough to introduce us to Don and said, he really thought that Don would be a wonderful addition to the show. And I've got to say, as you get to read his bio and our listeners get to hear where he's from, we did not plan this, folks. this wasn't planned, but boy, I'm sure that Don has a whole lot to say, and I've got a lot of great questions I think I want to ask Don. So,
Well, maybe I should just
thank you,
maybe I should
Greg.
just leave. I should just leave then. If you're all
I'm
you're gonna
good.
do is ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm good to go.
Okay.
Anyway, so thank you, Greg, and I'll just pass it to you to read Don's bio there.
So Don Morrison from TractionSpace is a transformational sales, marketing, and business leader with extensive experience in high tech. He is known for his ability to help businesses adjust to changing markets and increased competition, leading them to attain hard-to-reach goals and reestablishing competitive advantage. He has led successes at some of the high-tech industry's biggest names, including somebody named Microsoft, Sage Software, and Tektronix. In his most recent role at Microsoft, he led a $1 billion business that grew nearly 8 times during his tenure. In 2016, Don began his work to give back to the global community through social entrepreneurship. He has developed high-impact, scalable programs to improve the delivery of public health and increase digital literacy to underserved communities. Don holds a BS in marketing and an MBA in finance, currently lives in the Seattle area. TractionSpace cultivates vibrant virtual and physical work communities intentionally designed to help their members grow their business and enjoy their work experience. They provide a safe, well-managed environment that caters to the unique needs of their members and enables high productivity, creativity, business networking, and the ability to learn and grow professionally. They believe in mentorship and endeavor to provide the unique point of traction that helps build members move past barriers and into business and personal growth. Don, welcome to the Shrimp Tank. Is that
Thank you very
really?
much. Glad to be here. Who did you just
you?
describe?
Is that all true?
I have no idea who you described.
Well, either
I
that
just
or
wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and it doesn't seem like that guy.
Hey, Don, I'm going to, if it's okay with you, Brad, I'm going to kick this off because you mentioned it's the timing's incredible. We booked Don well before we even knew anything of what COVID-19 was. And in an age of people working virtually, some from their home, I also know that co-working spaces, I believe, have been deemed essential because of the importance of some of the people that work there. But talk about what's happened just in 2020 with the impact of the virus and how co-working facilities like yours have helped in that.
So I think it's a very unique time. We started with 2020 with, at least for us and others, with the expectation that co-working was going to be a great real estate play. And, you know, it was just a fantastic business. A lot of people have some fun. And then March came along and the world changed. So we have changed with it, and we've pivoted our business to make sure that we have embraced the new reality and created a very hygienic, safe, but wonderful workspace for people to get things done.
Well, I'd like to just kind of jump in on this. Don, I'm sure will be all over the place. And by the way, spin and PR is everything, right? So whoever wrote that for you is awesome. But, you know, and I would agree with you because among the conversations I've had as a business owner who's also owned real estate for their business in the past, I find it interesting that you mentioned that's a real estate play. And I couldn't help but think that actually that workspaces, co-working spaces actually will become very popular in the future. And here's my premise, and I would love for you to weigh in on this. Right now, I'd hate to be a major real estate investor with big commercial properties, because if there's one thing that I think that this incident has created for all of us is a meme that I was shown at the very beginning of this crisis, and that was, so I guess we're going to see how many of these meetings could have been in an email. And so I think where I'm going with this is, I think companies are going to start rethinking what their physical presence in expansion in various areas looks like. And, you know, for me, I can honestly tell you that, you know, we have looked to expand our business into other cities. And, you know, the traditional view would have been, let's go rent or lease a, 3 or 5 year lease. Let's office space, brick and mortar, people to see us. But I'm starting to rethink that. And I'm thinking that, you know, what we used to call in the military hot bunking, which is kind of what I think co-working space is a lot, which is if I can just go in and meet with my clients there, if that's what they choose to do, because we've already impacted the habits of Americans with regard to their willingness, their ability to meet virtually. So what say you?
So I would agree with that. I think if you look, for example, at Microsoft right now, they are building out a big campus and had a lot of leased buildings in the Puget Sound area. A lot of that's changing. A lot of that work is stopping as their employees aren't coming back, at least until October. Could be the end of the year up there. And so they're going to be in their home office. Do high-tech companies like Microsoft, Facebook, Google, Salesforce, others, do they need all that space with all of those knowledge workers working remotely with great tech tools and great communication platforms? Probably don't. So there's a concept that just came out. There's this concept called third office. Mm-hmm. And the third office concept is basically says, you know, if you're going to be a knowledge worker and you work for the man, you probably need to go in every now and then just to maintain your connection to people and work in team situations, maybe see a client or two. You work from home the rest of the time, but you don't want to alienate yourself or cut yourself out from the business community. You need a space to go that's close to home where you can get professional services, have a professional environment, keep the kids from yelling, keep the dogs from jumping up in your space, and get work done. In that regard, co-working spaces are the essential new pivot for people who are working remotely. And then, as you said, also for corporations that may decide, I want to provide that for my employees, give them a place to go and be productive.
Yeah.
Hey, Don, I'm nervous you talked about the dogs because Captain Jack's right next to me. We don't know. He could make his first ever appearance.
Just don't let him hit the stop record button.
I know, stop record. You know, talking about co-working facilities, though, as a place to go to forget about the dog and all of that. One of the dangers that have come are people working from home and increasing the vulnerability to cyber attacks. And I would think that the ability to go to a place like TractionSpace and take that away from their personal computers and their personal realm and go to a place that has probably a higher level of safety and security would be something that companies are looking for as well for their employees. Would you agree?
I totally agree. We've got a full security protocol here and pretty strong firewalls and a fiber deliver 1 gigabit of internet. And so, in fact, the internet issue was such a big deal, especially to start for here in downtown Tacoma, because a lot of the underserved communities had very poor internet connections. And kids' assignments were coming out and couldn't be downloaded because their bandwidth was just too weak, or it was a very unsafe environment. You never knew what viruses were coming with that download. So to help that, we opened up a free public Wi-Fi network up here that's off the top of our building to allow people within a quarter mile or so to come in, drive up, download stuff for free so they can stay connected. But, you know, Dan, you're absolutely right, is that the quality and the security of your internet connection is absolutely critical.
So you know what else is critical, Don? You might not know this, but we have to pay the piper. We've got to pay our sponsors right now. We're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Don Morrison, for our Hot or Not section of the show, vamos a hablar un poquito en español. That's right. You don't want to walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
The Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by IdealLife360.com. What would it be like to be in the best shape of your life, both physically and mentally, every day for the rest of your life? Have awesome relationships with the people you care about most, never having to worry about money again. What would it be like if you received a letter out of the blue and suddenly discovered you had 20 more years to live than you ever imagined? What would you do with those extra years of your life? How many lives would you touch? What kind of legacy would you leave behind? What changes would you make today knowing you had 20 more years in your future? What new, big challenges would you take on? What would be next? Text the word IDEAL to 89800 and discover how to rethink, redefine, and reinvent the best years of your life.
Well, speaking of those, those taskmasters of people that we've got to pay the piper. Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from the virtual Wheaton Unleashed studio, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I'm Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host Dan Wheaton. Remember, you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or catch us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So for our next segment, Dan,
Hot or Not is sponsored by Shrimp Peeler Sponsors, West Sound Workforce, Port Ludlow Resort, Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, SJ Graphics, and the Kitsap Sun newspaper. Don, Brad and I are going to pepper you with some questions about concepts and topics in business and life, and then you're going to tell us if that topic or concept is hot or not, and then why. Mi pregunta, por favor. Hot or not? Learning another language for business purposes.
Hot. And the reason it's hot is because we are becoming a more diverse business and ecosystem. And we need to communicate with our various customer sets and potential business partners.
And I know you speak, the reason we did a little sleuthing. We know that you speak both Spanish and French, and I don't do French, so I did a little Spanish for that. But
je parle français.
Oh, oui.
Okay, well, there you go. Brad, you're up next. What's your hot or not?
Well, it's a bit of a softball, but I want to carry on with it, and that would be Don. Hot or not? Being able to accept your cheese being moved.
Oh, you have to definitely consider that one hot. That's so hot, you might dunk a piece of bread in it and eat it.
So hot it's fondue.
Fondue.
Yeah. Hey, the reason I'm asking the question is, I'd love your observations of how you've seen businesses either thrive with this change, simply survive in this new change, or from your expertise, perhaps look at them and say, wow, I don't think they're going to make it. And I'd love kind of your business acumen observation in those areas.
Sure, absolutely. I think that for each of it, there's old world revenue and there's new world revenue, and we all have to embrace the new world revenue out there. And when we look at the new world revenue, it's companies like Zoom, companies like Microsoft, who are really pivoting to online right now, that are really driving change out there. Old world revenue is, for example, if it could be co-working in some cases that jammed a bunch of desks together, didn't deliver any value added, never cleaned their space, and created a very unhygienic type of environment. I'll tell you, hygiene sells right now. It's cool, and you have to pivot in what's cool. So. I do know that some people and restaurants it's going to be an interesting game, and gyms, to see how they survive. Those that required on people in a space, kind of packed in there, how are they going to do it? How are we going to get that return on investment with them? I don't know. I'm sure there'll be some capacity management. I'm sure there'll be reservation systems in place. I'm sure there will be a lot more expansion to outdoor facilities when the weather's nice. But we'll see how that goes. But I think the first thing that every business has to do is really pivot to their strengths and understand how those strengths can become a asset in the new world. And they're going to have to look at what the new liabilities of their old business model were and mitigate those and figure out a way to go forward. So there is a way to go forward. There are opportunities that this brings. Every business has to find their unique opportunities.
That's great.
Let's talk a little bit about TractionSpace itself. Talk about your building, square feet, type of construction, how many people, what's the capacity, where are you at now? And I guess if somebody's watching this, do you have space for them? Is there some space in that Traction for more people? Talk a little bit about your building.
Yeah, absolutely. So we own the building. It's the Azure Pool building in downtown Tacoma, built in 1927, one of the first public swimming pools in the Pacific Northwest. And we completely restored it. It's 15,500 square feet. We have a Cafe Azure up in front on site. And then we have 4 floors of private offices, dedicated desks, video studios, podcast studios, and of course, co-working and meditation rooms and a few other things. Our whole vision for this space was to make it a wonderful experience, completely beautiful, but full of amenities and rich in programs. So our differentiator is really, we're a digital content hub with our production studios and podcast studios. And then we also believe that everyone deserves a mentor. And so we provide a mentorship program that will scale to all of our members so that they can accelerate or build their businesses with the help and perspective of others.
Wow.
We do have space, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are you comfortable talking a little bit about, membership or the fees to get involved? If anybody is kind of interested in that, I don't know if that's publicly available on the website or it's on a case-by-case basis. But maybe share a little bit about that for people who might be curious about. That sounds all great, but
well, we're trying to make it very affordable right now. And so it starts at just $75 a month for a co-working membership. And that's down from $175. We want to get as many people in here as possible. And we have dedicated desks, which are now $295 a month. And again, that's a special promotion where we have a third off right now on that. And then we have private offices that start as low as $455. And so it's easy to get into. We're pretty flexible on our terms, and you don't have to rent it for 3 to 5 years. You can come in and rent it by the month if you want to.
that's awesome.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I've got some experience with some clients in the co-working world, and one of the things that seems to be prevalent is the sense of community. And I know you use the word community in your bio and talking about it. It seems like you can build a community of people who work in a certain radius. This isn't a competitive thing necessarily for co-working facilities. There's room for a lot of co-working facilities in different areas that kind of reach out to a radius of community where people don't have to drive that far to get. Maybe they might even be able to walk. Am I on base with that?
Yeah, one of the interesting new pivots that have come out of this COVID-19 issue is the importance of the neighborhood. We've all been walking in our neighborhoods and exploring new areas within it, meeting new people, and chances are there's a co-working space in that neighborhood. And so we encourage people to kind of expand their neighborhood view and find their local co-working space and go visit it. There's a lot of great assets and a lot of people and communities that you can be a part of, and that'll really complement your home working experience.
So Don, I'm just curious, for somebody who's kind of in this world, have you found that most people have been pretty accepting of moving into kind of a virtual environment? That's kind of part A of my question. And part B is the flip side. Are there those that you have found that resist it? And if so, I guess I'd ask the question, what has been your experience to the why? And what advice would you have for somebody that is having potential difficulty shifting their mindset to the virtual world?
Well, I worked remote for 15 years as an executive, and I came up to the corporate headquarters as needed, worked remote when needed, and was very successful at it. So being remote does not hold anyone back. In fact, the tools have only gotten better. The bandwidth has gotten larger out to the home, so there's all kinds of things you can do. The key thing to working remotely is to stay engaged with your community around you, and to not be quiet. You have to have a voice when you're working online. And so, for example, in a Zoom call, try and make insightful comments in the chat bar to show that you're paying attention. Ask meaningful questions. Be prepared when you're giving a presentation. Watch your workspace so that it's calm, quiet, serene, and you can focus on content instead of managing the distractions behind you. So I think that, you know, working remote right now, it's a huge new opportunity. It's not going away. And as long as you can keep yourself connected, you're going to be a happy person in that environment as well. Now, that said, there are going to be people, and yeah, I just saw a new survey that only 12% of the people now would embrace working at home 100% of the time, because the vacation period's over, right? The first month of this was all fun and games, and we were working remote, and it was kind of neat and it's kind of cool. But now that it's dragged on, people are really craving that social interaction out there. So you need to get that.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go back. We have to get one more hot or not in, Don. So I'm going to ask this one: hot or not? Dress shirt with cargo shorts and flip-flops going together. What do you think about that?
Super hot.
Super. we've got my daughter works in the corporate in Nordstrom in their corporate, and she says dress shirts are hot right now. The slacks are not. I got a great deal on a couple of pairs of slacks. I mean, I got really nice slacks for just about next to nothing, but the shirts cost me a fortune.
Yes, yeah. Shirts are hard to find these days. So,
but no, I guess a little bit of kidding aside, that though what you just mentioned about people 12% don't want to do it full time. I'm hearing stories of kind of a hybrid model where because of the physical distancing that is required, employers may need to, how do I say this? Some people will work maybe Monday, Wednesday, some will work Tuesday, Thursday, some might work Tuesday, Friday, and those other days are going to have to, I can see that be a real advantage for co-working facilities to kind of plug that hole.
I agree. This rotational scheduling that is emerging, that concept we spoke of earlier, that third office, it really plays an important role. And you know, being able to go somewhere that's not all the way up to work, you don't have to battle the long commute, but you have a professional facility, you connect with people. It's really important.
So this survey that shows 12%, because I'm, you know, one of the things that I was thinking that may have been a result of this is that what was the old number, right? Because my sense is that the concept of working remotely, which I think for a lot of individuals has kind of been, you know, I think for some, right, it's nirvana, right? And for others, they think it's just a silly notion. But my sense is that this has become more accepted. And maybe to frame this up, and I know we've got to go to commercial, you know, I've been in the financial services industry for 30 years. And one of the things that has been kind of the pride of what we do is the face-to-face, personal touch, personal interaction that we provide. But I will tell you, I'm starting to turn. And the reason that I'm starting to turn is I think I had it in my own head that clients wouldn't want to meet virtually, right? But what I'm finding is that even though we have relationships with clients that are 100% virtual, I mean, before this ever began, one of the things that I have found super interesting is just the absolute willingness of individuals to say, I am not canceling my appointment, I am keeping it. And if you'll help and teach me how to do this thing, I'm willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the acceptance of virtual as being able to deliver the same quality or almost the same quality as an in-person experience is much more accepted now.
I'm sorry, Don. I didn't mean to interrupt. Please finish.
I'm good. Go ahead, Dan.
No, I heard the quick pause and I didn't give you a chance. My apologies. We are going to take a quick pause and then we're going to go straight to the finish line after that. We're going to take that short break to hear from our sponsors. But when we come back with our guest, Don Morrison with TractionSpace, for our famous or infamous Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're going to ask what Don thinks about failing forward. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
The Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by our studio sponsor, Whedon Unleashed. As a business owner, you don't have a professional life and a personal life. You have a life. And that life is full of opportunities and obstacles. Your business is a vehicle to fuel your life. If you run out of fuel because of a crisis, then your entire lifestyle is affected. Dan Whedon works with small and medium business owners to ensure that no calamity is fatal. Dan focuses on accelerating business growth while at the same time planning and implementing strategies on preventing, mitigating, and recovering those obstacles of business and life. Through his consulting work and his partnership with First Underwriters Insurance to finance your risk, he'll make sure that you can, with confidence, unleash the value of your business and lifestyle. To get a complimentary review of your situation, call Dan at 360-271-1592 or email him at dan@danwhedon.com. Tell Dan you heard him on the Shrimp Tank podcast and receive a 20% discount on any work that's agreed to. Be unleashed and be well.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I'm Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host Dan Whedon, and you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or catch us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. For our next segment, Plead the Fifth.
And Plead the Fifth is sponsored by our shrimp peelers, West Sound Workforce, Port Ludlow Resort, Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, SJ Graphics, and the Kitsap Sun. Before we go on to that, Don, I apologize if I cut you off. Did you have anything you wanted to add to the end?
No, I'm looking forward to pleading the fifth.
Oh, well, no, listen, you only get your catch once. You get to plead the fifth just once. So if you do it early on, oh boy, watch out. Listen, so we're gonna ask you the questions. They're gonna be tough ones, and after you're all done, at the end you win nothing. So we're gonna talk about doing a little failing forward. So plead the fifth, Dawn. What was the biggest failure you had that taught you more than any success you had? What was that failure, some point in your life that you learned more than some of the successes that you had?
Well, I think early on in my career, I had to learn the lesson a few times that it was what you know instead of people. And so I tried to, and I probably was right in some of these situations, absolutely bull my opinion and point of view through on the teams that I managed. They didn't respond. I was charging up the hill and they weren't following. So a much more effective way is to work with your teams, get input, have them have shared ownership and decisions. And that was a lesson that early on, especially for type A personality, it was hard to learn, but I'm glad I learned it.
And you may not have learned it without having those failures, right? I mean, it's not something that's necessarily intuitive. It's one of those things that the only way you learn is by having those, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Brad.
So my plead the fifth is, Don, it's always interesting when we have individuals who've had successful corporate careers, right? They as you like to say, work for the man, so to speak, and then transition into an entrepreneurial role. What were the thoughts going through your head as you made that leap?
Well, I thought that I would retire from Microsoft and go take on a career of philanthropy. And I actually like philanthropy. Giving back and running social impact programs gives me a lot of joy. But I also like working with people in entrepreneurial environments. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and that's where I ended up pivoting. So it took about a year to kind of redefine myself after I left Microsoft, and always been interested in real estate. So buying these buildings and rehabbing them, and then actually putting in a business that I could run and grow, and was all about people and entrepreneurism, was just so fulfilling.
Can I do a quick follow-up, which
Please.
is not a please? Does TractionSpace have expansion plans?
We do. It's kind of interesting you mentioned that. We were going to expand physically on the East Coast and the West Coast and had our locations all mapped out, but we're changing our tune right now, and we'll be expanding online first. and then picking a couple strategic markets once we see how this all plays out.
So what will expanding online look like?
Yeah, we'll be introducing a online co-working product here shortly, where we're going to bring our online mentoring online at scale. We're going to have mail handling and virtual office solutions out there. We'll have meeting management that'll be available to people who are members, so we can come in, provide moderation for meetings, and even provide full hosting services.
Excellent.
You know, I want to come back. I was going to ask you about philanthropy, but you just said something that intrigued me, and it really resonated about some of the things you're going to do. Has this COVID-19 situation for you sparked that innovation? Is there something that you're going to do into the future that in January or February you had no thought of, you had no clue, but because of this, that entrepreneurial spirit and innovation kind of came out, and now you're going to do it?
We went through a whole repositioning pivot. And so for us, the online will also mean we'll be launching a digital agency here. And that includes site development and hosting and campaign management and a whole host of things in that area. So TractionSpace Online will be putting up very soon. We'll be leveraging our studios, TractionSpace Studios as well, in a much more meaningful way, developing content. And then, of course, we're going to bring our online co-working solutions to the market as well.
Brad, would you mind if I ask my philanthropy question really quick? Because
Please go for it.
I was intrigued by the specificity of one of them. Don, you talked about increasing digital literacy in underserved communities. And I have to tell you, because I've been active in the school, passing the school board here and with the school district, I think I was just naive and really embarrassed about my naivete about how many people don't have the internet bandwidth like I do. You kind of get thinking that, oh, everybody's got this, but they didn't. And there's a huge underserved group. And when it comes to digital literacy and how important it is, can you talk about that philanthropic idea and some of the things that you're doing about it?
Yeah, for me, that started in Latin America when I was on a trip, and specifically down in Peru. And so we saw a huge divide between in the Peruvian population between those that had something and they all had access to internet, and those that were really disenfranchised from the economy, and they were selling tacos and selling handiware and arts and crafts on the street. There was no internet that they had access to. So when it came to public health especially, we wanted to ensure that at least they had connectivity up in their areas so that they could remain healthy, address some of the more global issues like domestic violence, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and those types of issues. So that became a passion down there. And that's where most of my work has been done. We did that work at a couple orphanages to bring them online and teach them about not only bring the bandwidth connection in, but to also teach them about Microsoft Office and the basic tools so that they could be on par with their students in public schools. So we want to do that, and we will be doing that through a couple of different vehicles here at home now shortly too. And stay tuned for that one.
Okay. So, yeah, please let us know so we can spread the word. Yeah, Brad,
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
No, Don. Well, I had a question because I'm thinking to myself, been an entrepreneur for 3+ decades, and it's kind of all I know. But what I do know is a lot of the reasons, right, that individuals are scared to make the move, right, into entrepreneurial. A lot of it has to do with overhead. So I'd love for maybe just your perspective as we start to wrap up today, from somebody who runs co-working space with all this virtual elements. What would you say to somebody out there that is has an idea, has a concept, et cetera, but doesn't know where to begin, and the benefits that this new, because I consider this just to be an incredibly new opportunity that we've kind of broken through, if you will, the virtual glass ceiling of acceptance, if you will, to include the ability for somebody to come to a place like yours. From your perspective, what opportunities does that offer, and are there some specific industries or sectors of the market that you think would best be served by this new reality that we're in?
Boy, that's a great question, a complex one, but great.
Yeah.
So I think.
Well, it is plead the fifth.
Yeah, well, I want to answer it, but I probably should plead the fifth. But I think that for those that are waiting to start entrepreneurship, if this is something your heart has always told you want to do, there's probably no better time than right now to do it. The world's changed. Your ideas are out there, and they're closer than ever. I'm a big proponent of taking prudent risks and trying things out. If you fail, it's only an opportunity to pick yourself up and try again. So I would encourage people to do that, and I would encourage you to line up with someone like TractionSpace, who provides that mentorship and someone you can talk to. Mentors don't have to be a deeply committed relationship. They can just be someone who can listen and give perspective, but find someone to talk your ideas through. And then, some of these spaces like ours actually have some incubation, and they can train you in some of the techniques of entrepreneurship, how to come up with a good solid idea, how to develop your value prop, how to come up with a solid business plan. Don't skip those phases. They're super critical for your success in the future. So I think that, co-working spaces play a good role in that, taking risk in this new environment. And I think, Brad and Dan, your point about this being the best time ever, in the industries that may need that redevelopment, there's a lot that people are saying or feeling is going wrong right now. But on the opposite side of that coin are a lot of new opportunities to solve those problems. Look for the areas where those biggest problems exist and go create interesting new solutions. Well, you can just take one that we talked about earlier, real estate, for example. What are the new solutions for those large building owners in downtown Seattle, Tacoma, LA, San Francisco? They may be losing tenants. Well, for us, we may approach them and say, hey, we're going to provide programming to you so you can open up your own co-working space and bring in some of these new entrepreneurs that are out there and relight your buildings. So, any problem out there is just a opportunity waiting to be, exploited.
Well, I'll just say it, great minds think alike, because that's what I'm thinking. What I'm thinking is there's a lot of this real estate is going to get turned into co-working space. But Don, we want to thank you so much for coming on the program today. For our listeners that want to get in touch with you or learn more about TractionSpace, how can they get more information?
www.tractionspace.com. Or if you want to give me a call or text me, 360-798-0045.
Well, our next show from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio will be Wednesday, June 24th, 2020, when our guest will be Carly Tizano with Masterpiece Organizing. Make sure you check out all the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, and now on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And remember, to become a shark, we all start out as shrimps.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in a shrimp tank.